Hello, my name is Debbie Boone, and I want to welcome you to my podcast, The Bend, where we explore how successful people navigated the path and emerged in a better place when life threw them an unexpected twist. It's inspired by one of my favorite sayings: the bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the curve. These conversations will hopefully help you and inspire you to embrace your personal bend and to flourish. I hope you enjoy it, and if you need help with your own personal navigation and you're in veterinary medicine, please feel free to reach out to me at Debbie Boone to Manage Vets Consulting. Enjoy the bend and be inspired by our wonderful guest. Welcome. Well, welcome to everyone today, the episode of The Bend, where we shine a light on innovators, disruptors, and change makers who are bending the veterinary profession for the better. My name is Debbie Boone. I'm a speaker, trainer, champion of veterinary teams, and on The Bend, I talk with leaders and business owners who are shifting the mindsets, who are breaking molds and designing a more compassionate, sustainable, and forward-thinking veterinary world. So whether you're a practice owner, team member, industry partner, you're going to leave this episode with some fresh ideas, some inspiring stories, and some practical tools to actually create meaningful change in your own corner of the profession. So let's get started and discover how the bend begins. So today I'm going to welcome my guest, Michael Cody. Michael is the founder of Review Tree. And I found Michael through a mutual friend of ours who works a lot with industry partners, Bruce Truman. So thank you, Bruce, for this introduction. But Michael has more than 35 years experience working with businesses on local marketing, advertising, and public relations. He's consulted for large healthcare institutions like the Cleveland Clinic and Sloan Kettering, so big time companies. But he's also helped thousands of small businesses, like most veterinary hospitals, to save more than $50 million on ineffective and inefficient marketing. His experience covers the old days of print yellow pages, which I have to laugh and say, I was there. I was dealing with the print yellow pages and the directories and the phone books. Then social media marketing came on and pay-per-click advertising, word of mouth, and reputational marketing. So today he's going to help us learn a little bit about growing the customer experience as the foundation of marketing. You know, I've talked to a lot of people who are marketing folks, Michael, and one of the things they all universally say is, I can do a great job for my customer and do SEO and send clients into that practice. But if the person who's answering the phone is not doing a good job, then it doesn't really make any difference how many people I send to them, because they're not getting captured. And so there's no ROI. So thank you very much for joining me today and spending some time with my audience.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you for the very helpful, wonderful introduction. And yes, I know you had shared with me that that in your experience, you remember the days when they would come in, the yellow page people would come in, and they tried to convince every practice that they needed a full page ad in the phone book, because if you didn't buy it, the practice down the street would, and then they're going to steal all your customers.
Yes, yes. You know, I used to tell people, and they never had an answer for this, and I would say, women don't find their gynecologist from the yellow pages. What they do is they ask their girlfriends who you like, and then they go and find their gynecologist. So I feel like the same thing is true for veterinary medicine. Is people, it's a word of mouth business, and you gotta build the customer experience so that your clients are raving fans, and they're just a sales force out there into the world to drive people into your hospital. So tell me a little bit about, your background and
Mhm.
how you started Review Tree and how that's making a difference in veterinary practices.
So, as I mentioned, I started off my career working and running an ad agency that basically worked with Main Street businesses like veterinary hospitals on consulting on where were their advertising and marketing dollars being spent. And agency's model is to work sort of on a contingency basis. If we can find and uncover savings and it makes sense, then we get to share in a portion of those savings. And part of that process was working with business owners to identify the source of their clients. Where are your clients really coming from, and what are the things that are driving growth for your business. And this applied to veterinary hospitals. It applied to pretty much any Main Street business. And one of the things that I learned in that process, and we did this thousands and thousands of times, was when you started to peel back the layers of what makes a successful SMB or small to mid-sized business, it was typically related to client experience and the fact that if you have strong word of mouth, if you deliver an excellent customer experience, then you will have reduced churn. Your clients will stay with you. And if you can deliver something that's exceptional, they're going to tell other people about it, and that's going to bring them in the door.
Hmm.
So, the promise of things like, that full page ad in the phone book, well, everybody's going to see it. Or, now then it migrated into social media. So you got to put like a billion things on Facebook, and that's what will make people come in. Or then, with Google AdWords, which Google AdWords get very, very expensive very, very quickly.
Yes.
So especially for like emergency medicine, veterinary medicine, we've seen keywords, they're costing 50, 60, $70 a click,
Wow.
and there's no assurance that just because they click on something that they're even going to come to you.
Right.
So the origin story kind of for me was that once once the digital landscape started to impact locally, and that was through things like Demand Force and Merchant Circle, and these early days of when public opinion started coming up in the form of reviews, because advertising was always about businesses telling the story about themselves. It was their voice. They're saying,
Mhm.
here's who we are, and this is what we're about. And that was really the only source of truth. When you started to see reviews take place in online, suddenly it became the customers who became the voice of what is that business. And it was a much more honest and accurate way to view something
Mhm.
because the way that those clients talk about the business is probably a more accurate reflection than how the business talks about themselves.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
So one of the things that we found is like to be able to come up with ways for engagement. So with the name like Review Tree, we started off generating reviews and we got very good at that. However, the technical bar of generating reviews is really not that hard. It comes down to being really good at asking and automating that process. So that
Hmm.
is part of what Review Tree foundationally does is, we typically see an increase in positive reviews for our clients of about 500%. But we've had instances where it could be 1,000% or
Hmm.
1,500%.
Hmm.
So growing reviews is not a huge challenge,
Hmm.
certainly not for us. What we see though is the bigger potential is the operational insights that we gain when we are surveying those clients to find out about their client, about what their experience was like, what was
Hmm.
their client journey like. So part of what we kind of see is that in the veterinary space in the industry, when we were, in COVID times, it seemed like the demand and potential for new customers was like endless. It would never stop. And everyone was busy, and hospitals would put up big signs, no more customers, I can't take any more clients, we're all filled. And part of what happened because of that is you got a lot of private equity, a lot of VC funding started coming in, and it was like we can build an unlimited number of hospitals and we'll always be filled to the brim. It's never endless.
They should have asked somebody like me who'd been doing this more than a minute because it was a fluke, right? COVID was a fluke. And I agree with you that private equity came in and went, oh, this is a glory hole. This is
Mhm.
a recession-proof business,
Yep.
and we're going to buy as many of them as we can, and we're going to flip them as soon as we can because that's how we'll make money off of them. So I agree with you. And then the shock came that they actually had to be operators. They had to learn
Yes.
how to manage their businesses. And I think that's where the big glitch it came. And I feel like some of those hospitals went out of business, They
Yep.
could not man the staff, and they tend to drive a very purpose-driven group of people to focus on revenue rather than principles,
Yes.
and that did not play well in the sandbox. Would you agree with me?
Very much so. And that's sort of, it was almost like we're going to achieve financial growth through cost-cutting measures and reduction of staff, reduction of training, and we're going to raise prices and we're going to make tons of money. But the reality is that since 2023, visits have been dropping each and every year.
Hmm.
So it was down 1.4% in 2023. It was down 2.6% in 2024. Visits down a further 3.1% for 2025. And 2026 is expected to be another 3.4% drop.
Hmm. Hmm.
So suddenly these days of endless customers and endless appointments is changing. I mean, the amount of time that a pet owner will wait between visits has it's almost doubled. It's down at like 48% longer than just a few years ago. So they're
Yeah.
not coming in as frequently.
I think the stat that I just heard was only 25% of our clients are actually compliant on annual
Yeah.
visits. And then that 75% is anywhere from 4 to 6 months behind in
Hmm.
their routine care. But we are also, which happens in every recession. This is like number
Yeah.
four for me, is that people tend to wait until their animal is sick and come in out of duress rather than like, proactive care. And we see that a lot in that in these recessionary times, even though technically I guess we're not in an economic recession, but the disposable income that people have is really being strained by things like grocery cost.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So wellness visits are down, vaccination is down, product-related purchase visits are all
Hmm.
down, canine is down. Uh, Feline is the one thing that seems like it has a little bit of an uptick,
Hmm.
but feline doesn't make up a huge amount of the market. And and feline cats are just less likely to go to the vet. They're not outside. They're not getting injured. There's not a huge revenue opportunity necessarily from that little bit of growth you're
Hmm.
getting on the feline side. So what does all this kind of have to do with client experience, and why do I say that client experience is going to be the foundation of marketing for vets going forward?
Hmm.
Well, the reason for that is, as we just talked about, is as a shrinking market. We have more competition than ever, and clients ultimately kind of have a choice.
Hmm.
And so the hospitals that are going to succeed will be those that focus on that client journey
Hmm.
and make sure that they're delivering the best experience possible every step of the way.
Yeah.
As
I want to stop you just a minute, Michael, because I think that the term client journey
yes,
needs a little explanation here because a lot of our clients, a lot of the people who watch this podcast
yeah,
are medical people. They're technical folks, they're scientists, and they really don't spend a lot of time in this space of customer experience and client journey. And I feel like we probably need to dig into that just a little bit. What is that client journey as a marketing term or
mhm,
as even data points? I mean, we can measure every one of those steps in that client journey if we are doing things appropriately.
correct. And you, this was your phrase, not mine, but veterinarians need to understand, and leadership and management, that they are in the hospitality business
Yes.
because the pets don't have credit cards.
Right.
So we need to make sure that the people that are bringing these animals in and paying for this care, they need to be the ones that you're focusing on. They need to be the hero of the story.
Hmm.
So when we're talking about client experience, the way that we analyze it is we break down when we're our platform, the way it works is post visit, we're sending out a request for feedback. Please tell us how we did so we can do the best job possible. Then we slice up that client journey into like 16 individual steps. So
Mm.
everything from scheduling an initial contact to, the front desk or wait time, the wait area, your experience with the tech, your experience with the vet. How well did we explain the medical, issues?
Hmm.
How well did we give you forecasts of what you can expect and what your options are?
Hmm.
And we analyze each one of these individual points
Hmm.
because that whole process is what makes up that client journey.
Hmm.
And hospitals can be very good at some aspects
Right.
of the client journey
Yeah.
and absolutely terrible at others.
100%. Yes, I 100%
So
agree with you.
for us, the key is identifying and measuring on a consistent basis across a large enough group of your clients
Hmm.
to see where there are operational bottlenecks.
Hmm.
because if people don't understand why you're recommending a certain level of care, they're going to be less likely to be compliant and
Hmm.
participate because they don't understand.
Right. Yeah.
And, a common area that we see is that a lot of folks, they got into veterinary medicine because they like dealing with animals maybe more than people.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's the people who we need to communicate with to
Yes.
explain to them, here's what's going on, here's why it is happening, here's the possible outcomes, here's the options for treatment. Let's talk about those and make sure you understand each of these elements. And let's figure out a path forward that's going to work best for you.
Mhm. Yeah, I
So
love the fact
that's kind
that,
of what we mean when we talk about client journey.
yeah, that you break that down because I feel like we think, okay, we answer the phone on time.
Yep.
We get them into a room on time. We talk to our clients, we get them out. We, send them we call them back to make sure that everything is okay and that we have capitalized on the client journey. But when you say there are 18 points of contact, I really feel it starts with what does our website look like? How easy
Yeah.
is it to even find directions and phone numbers? Because
Hmm.
as a consultant, I laugh and say I start at the parking lot, work through the back door when I'm
Yep.
doing a consultation. And part of this is reviewing website marketing and the messages that are going out. And I've found websites that the hours are wrong. The you cannot find the directions to the hospital. You
Yes.
can't find a contact place where I can call you or even send you a text message because they're buried somewhere because a professional marketing company didn't build your website, your third cousin's kid did, and
Yeah.
that's what's up there, right? So I feel like there's so much that we have not paid attention to in client journey. And every single person on the team needs to be trained in customer experience management.
Yes. Absolutely.
We limit that. I mean, I train the client service and communication classes for Patterson for 11 years, all over the United
Hmm.
States. And I would say 90% of the people who attended my classes were the front desk.
Yep.
But every person in the hospital needed to know the information. And it was valuable to the front desk people. They certainly are that first and last impression, but they can be wonderful. And then that doctor or technician comes in, talks over their head, uses jargon they don't understand.
Yeah.
They come back up to the front desk for explanation, which
Hmm.
means that you should be training your front desk on medical terminology because they have to interpret for your clients. And then there can be confusion there. So the front desk is also there who um, kind of confirms to the client that they should be doing it or coming back or using the medication and the importance of it. Because the doctors say, oh, well, they said yes to everything. I said, yeah, until they got to the front desk and started
Right. And
passing
they
out.
didn't understand.
Right. And they, well, I
And
don't really want
yes.
that. Yes.
And part of kind of the way we approach it, since we have deep integration into the PIM systems,
Mm.
we're lining up that client experience and client journey data that I mentioned, even down to a provider level, to an appointment level, to a department level.
Mhm.
So we can get deep insights into like what's going on at a hospital, down to the individual provider or team
Mhm.
member or staff member.
Mhm.
And we have one of our clients had shared with us that they were using the feedback that we get, we push to them every day. They get dozens and dozens of responses from clients.
Mhm.
And they noticed that one of the most common complaints was the person up at the front was rude, was dismissive, that they basically didn't, every customer engagement was like an annoyance to them.
Mhm.
And they realized, we hired based on somebody having experience in the industry, but maybe we should be hiring more on the temperament of
Yeah.
wanting to actually, be supportive and
Yeah.
helpful to our clients.
Yeah.
And so they changed around roles and put person in a different position that
Uh-huh.
wasn't so client facing and put somebody in place that was just had a natural affinity and friendliness about them. And they saw that their metrics on that were like, on a scale of 1 to 10, they were getting like an average score of like a 3,
Mhm.
but they switched out the personnel. Now they get 8, 9s, and 10s in
Yeah.
that area. So just that one little change
Yes.
can impact what every
Mhm.
single client is
Yeah.
experiencing when they go through there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when I was hiring for the front desk, I rarely hired anybody that had been working in another veterinary hospital. And
Hmm.
sometimes people are shocked because that's one of the things, they'll put veterinary experience preferred. I
Yes.
didn't prefer that. I preferred that they had been a waitress or a
Yep.
bartender or had worked in a customer facing retail store where they were either paid on commission or tip
Yes.
because you learn, and I grew up in the restaurant business, so you learn how to modify your behavior to satisfy the customer, and that's how you get paid. And then there's
Right.
immediately a positive feedback there, whatever they leave on the table. So I feel like those are the kind of people that need to be at the front desk instead of the people who just want to get their foot in the door and get in the treatment room, and which is what we tend to hire. So we need to hire people who enjoy people, who want to
Hmm.
do that work because they're the face of our practice and they are the welcoming committee and they are the sales force
Yep.
for entry into the hospital.
Yes, very much so, because they can also be the ones that kind of can smooth over if there's, again, maybe a miscommunication or
Mhm.
something like that. We had one practice that has a large number of doctors in there, and we noticed that this one particular provider, they would say stuff to, like, the client would be coming in and explaining what was going on, and this doctor would say stuff like, "Excuse me, did you go to veterinary school? I thought I was the doctor.
Oh no.
You don't need to tell me. I'm here to tell you." And the client's like, "I'm just explaining to you what we saw at home that prompted me to bring this animal in."
Yes.
And anyway, the vet was just so dismissive, and we saw multiple instances of this, but it's the people kind of at the front that are trying to do the cleanup job
Sure.
after that. And you mentioned the restaurant industry, and I'll just share a quick anecdote related to that. So, you had spoken and mentioned, like, that hospitals think like, oh, well, if we get answer the phone quickly and we, get them in on time, and we do each of these things, that's what we need to do.
Hmm.
And yes, that is part of what you need to do.
Hmm.
However, the hospitality business doesn't necessarily mean that you just don't create problems. You need to be able to create an exceptional experience.
Hmm.
And you can create an exceptional experience in a bad way or an exceptional experience in a positive way.
We're,
So,
we're really good at the bad experience way, I have to say.
yeah. So when I was at the Vet Together event, we
Uh-huh.
were having lunch and talking with somebody who was there, and just exchanging kind of ideas about, like, who are you, what you do. And this gentleman explained he was the husband, I think, of one of the veterinarians attending. And he's like, my father, 50 years ago, brought his dog to the vet to get spayed or neutered or something. And the animal died, blood out on the table. The vet never came out, never said anything, and just had the receptionist be like, "Hey, we're really sorry, your dog's dead." And he told my father, for 50 years, told every single person that he met the story about how that hospital killed his dog, and that nobody in the back, no doctor came out to speak to him.
Yeah.
And for 50 years, he told that story.
Yeah.
It stuck with him for a very long time.
Yes. Yeah.
So those types of mistakes, and again, because I see 50,000 customer responses a month is
Wow.
how much data we get.
Hmm.
And it is, pretty common to see responses where people are saying, "I am terminating my relationship with you. I'm never coming back here. You guys are horrible for the following reasons."
Hmm.
That client is not coming back. Their
Mm-mm.
lifetime value is now done. And more than likely, they will probably take a whole bunch of other people with them, because they'll tell people who might come to you to not do
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
So that type of revenue loss is a preventable thing if you pay attention to what people are talking
Mhm.
about and you train your staff on how to communicate.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
I've been working on it for 20 years, Michael.
And on the flip side, in the restaurant industry, I remember I went to Emeril's restaurant, Emeril
Uh-huh.
Lagasse's in New Orleans, like 25 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And what I remember, I mean, the food was really good, but what I remember is that it's a two-story restaurant. You got to take this old-fashioned, like, New Orleans elevator with all the wrought iron up.
Hmm.
And so my wife had said, "Where's the restroom?" And they go, "Oh, it's on the second floor." So she goes over, takes the elevator. When she gets up to the top, one of the wait staff is there. "Hi, Mrs. Cody. Please come with me. I'm going to escort you. I'll show you where everything is." Waited for her to come out, brought her back down. The fact that they communicated the guest's name to somebody up on the second floor
Yeah.
to wait for them to bring them that is an exceptional hospitality step.
Yes.
And it is not a hard one.
No.
But it's not one of the things that maybe comes to mind as like, did we get the food out on time?
Mhm.
Did we get them seated on time? Yes, you did all those things.
Those are kind of baseline. It's
Yeah.
the exceptional that makes the difference. I'm a big fan of Will Guidara and his hospitality work. And one of the things that we did in our hospital, I think is kind of a surprising thing when I tell people this story and they go, "Oh my gosh." We just noticed that people would forget their reading glasses. Readers are
Yeah.
are those kind of item that people leave all over their house and they don't put them in their purse. And so we went to the Dollar Tree and we got about 10 pairs of the wildest, most funky reading glasses we could
Hmm.
find. And we put them in a jar at the front desk. And when people started doing that long arm stretch, trying to read whatever it was we gave, we said, "Here, use ours." And we invested a whole dollar a pair in them, right? But we didn't care if they walked off with them. But people were shocked and amazed. It was a
Yes.
moment of surprise and joy. And it was doing things like that that was creative, that helped my staff stay interested in their work, but it
Hmm.
also made clients absolutely bulletproof. You could not pry our clients away from our practices. In fact, one of my favorite stories is I was training a hospitality class for a group in Raleigh, North Carolina, and it was actually an NVA hospital. And their medical director or their regional medical director was a practice owner who actually had a practice a half a mile up the road from ours.
Hmm.
And he said, "Debbie, you know what?" He said, we always wondered what the hell you people were doing up there in that hospital because we practice good medicine. But we would have your overflow clients come because we would do boarding and our boarding would
Hmm.
fill up over the holidays. And people would come in and we'd say, "Hey, you can stay here. We'll take care of your pets. And how would you like to, transfer your records?" He said no one ever would leave, even though we were cheaper.
Yes.
And he said, I could not figure out what was going on. And now I realized that it had nothing to do with the medicine. It had everything to do with the hospitality that you guys,
Yes.
the
It's
relationships
that
that you built.
relationship with
Yeah.
the client that is foundationally the most important thing.
Yeah. I mean, we had generations of clients. I,
Yes.
I was there almost 20 years. So we not only saw clients, we watched their kids grow up, become adults, get married, get their first pet, and come back to us again.
Hmm.
And that kind of generational commitment and retention of clients is so valuable because the marketing becomes really easy. It's basically stick your phone number somewhere people can find it, put a website up people like, and then build such an experience inside the building
Yes.
that they start to tell everybody and their brother, "You must come here. Do not even think about going anywhere else. This is the place."
E-
Um, and it
Exactly.
does work. It does
Yeah.
work. And it works internally too, because the staff, when you're working with clients that you like and that you know and that you've built a relationship with, first of all, they become very easy to work with. It's not
Yes.
adversarial. And then your job becomes a lot of fun because every time somebody walks in the door, it's an old friend coming back.
Hmm.
And somebody said it was like going to a wedding, right? That you
Yes.
see people you haven't
I
seen
like
in a
that
long time
analogy.
and you're
Yes.
excited to see them because you've come to the wedding and you're seeing everybody. But staff retention goes through the roof. My average receptionist stayed in my hospital 15 years,
Hmm.
and today's national average is 6 months.
Yes.
And it's because they weren't getting beat up at the front desk. They were having fun,
Yeah.
with people, and the clients were having fun when they walked in the door.
Yeah. One of the features that we added into our platform when we're collecting feedback is if we identify somebody had a five-star experience, we're asking that client, who was it, either by name or by role, that stood out to you and why?
Hmm.
And that data gets rolled up into a weekly staff appreciation report that gets sent to leadership, and it makes it super easy for them to call out praise and appreciation and look at
Hmm.
how much these people love you because it's so wonderful. Because sometimes the people staff at the hospital can feel like, they might see 30 clients, and the one they remember is the person who gets in their face and like, you're going to let my dog die, or all you want is
You
my
only care about the
money.
money.
All you care
Yeah.
about is the money. And so like it can be very depressing to
Yeah.
have that. You work really hard. So
Yeah.
giving them all this positive appreciation and praise absolutely helps retention, but it also helps that those staff members feel engaged. They know that what they're doing is making a difference.
Right, right. Well,
Um,
one of our challenges with key performance indicators in the veterinary hospital is it's fairly easy to measure doctor productivity.
yes.
And if you're leveraging your technicians and they're seeing exams, it's pretty easy to look and see how their productivity is playing out. But for the front desk, it's hard to measure that. And so having this kind of data allows us to say,
Yep.
look, we have a superstar CSR here who gets 5-star reviews every week, 15 or 20 of those, then
Hmm.
she should be rewarded for that. And we can also see the value in having her retained as
Yes.
one of our employees. And I think there's an ability to give credit where credit is due when prior to some tool like Review Tree, it's been very nebulous because it was
Yep.
kind of anecdotal, what a client happened to say to
Hmm.
you, and there was no formal way to find that. But now there's a way to measure, and I really love measuring stuff. So,
Very much so. And one of the things that we see sometimes, and I'll use emergency hospital as an example, um, we had an emergency hospital we were working with, and they were saying like, we're seeing a lot less clients. And I don't know, are you seeing this? Like, it just seems like our volume has dropped off substantially. And I went through and did an analysis, and I said, well, I think the problem is that the vast majority of clients that you are servicing are not happy, did not, they felt like nobody communicated to them. They were only given one option for care. It was like the gold standard or nothing else. And, and basically that was the problem, is your clients were not having a great experience.
mhm,
And they probably are going back and telling their GPs that didn't have a great experience there.
yeah,
And he could get away with that when he was the only emergency hospital in the entire community.
yes,
But there's now three others.
mm,
So those three hospitals, if you're the GP and you're given a choice of sending somebody to a hospital that, hey, when my clients come back, they rave about it, how much they appreciate it, or they complain about how horrible it was,
mhm.
you're not going to refer to them anymore.
No, no, no. That
And
is, yeah, as an emergency clinic, that's one of the things they have to realize that there are two sets of clients,
yes,
and that is the people who walk in the door and the people who refer to them.
that is
Specialists the
absolutely
same way.
correct.
Yeah, two
And
sets of clients.
and in contrast, we have another hospital that has similar issues, but they don't have any competition yet, and they have seen all of this negative content. Like,
Hmm.
they will tell people, look, give me $15,000 or your dog will be dead in an hour.
Oh
And it
God.
turns out the dog had ear mites.
Oh Lord. Oh.
Um, but the reason that this hospital operates this way is they feel like, hey, where else are they going to go? They're going to drive an hour to go someplace else?
Hmm.
Probably not. So we don't care.
Hmm.
So part of what our focus is, and when you bring the stuff up to them, everything is a one-off. Oh, it's just that one thing.
Yeah.
It's just that. Or, we had another hospital that we were bringing up some, kind of negative content. Like, these people didn't have a great experience. Let's
Hmm.
talk about that. And the hospital director is like, well, it's just buyer's remorse. They spent $50,000 on oncology treatments, and then it didn't work. So he was just pissed off. That's just how it goes.
Hmm.
And, I was going through the data. I'm like, actually, if you look at what the client says, it wasn't actually the outcome.
Hmm.
It was a lack of setting expectations.
Hmm.
It was a promise of outcomes. If you do this, then this will happen. And
Hmm.
then that didn't happen. So it was
Hmm.
really more about accurately setting
Yeah.
expectations that would have made the difference for this
Yeah.
client.
Yeah.
And, in a separate sense, or a more positive one, I've got a friend of mine who, her Havanese was diagnosed with cancer like a week ago.
Hmm.
So it's in the liver, it's in the pancreas, it's in the stomach, like, it is not going well.
It's not going good. No.
So I was able to get her into a specialty hospital that's here in Connecticut. And in any case, there was some medication that the animal needed to help reduce the bleeding and stuff internally. But it was going to be a 25-day wait to get it. For some reason, I don't
Mhm.
know, the warehouse or the distributor was moving. They couldn't get it to her. The oncologist actually called up another client whose pet had passed away and asked if they could drop off the medication because that client had the medication available and they didn't have an animal they needed.
Ah,
So the veterinarian actually contacted that pet owner.
hmm.
That pet owner was like, absolutely, I'm happy to help somebody else's dog, brought that in, and she had the medication within 2 hours.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is an example in the veterinary space of like this my friend is raving about
Yeah. That's
how
exceptional service. Yes.
how exceptional it was. And she's like, it expensive? Yes, it was it's expensive. But
Hmm.
she had no problem with the price because she felt that the people she was interacting with
Hmm.
had a fundamental degree of care and concern
Hmm.
and went out of their way to help her in a
Hmm.
situation when they could have just waited the 21
Sure.
days.
Yeah.
I don't know if the animal will live that long, but
Right.
but in any case, so
Yeah.
there's opportunities for hospitals to deliver on a positive experience, make a
Hmm.
positive experience. And the reason why, again, ha- one question might come up is, well, hasn't this always been the case? And yes and no, but it's increasingly important.
Hmm.
And the reason why is that we're moving into what's considered a trust economy
Hmm.
because part of what's happening is as I was at the mall the other day and there was some advertisement, some promotional thing. And anyway, the kid was like, somebody was complimenting it. He's like, that's just AI. That's like fake. So people keep calling out stuff being like, that's not legitimate.
Hmm.
And so part of what's transit happening, and this relates to AI, is that we're moving away from like searching for stuff.
Hmm.
So doing a Google search, and we're moving more towards asking.
Hmm.
So the difference here is that in searching, you're trying to narrow down all your choices, but in asking, you're trying to qualify and determine credibility.
Hmm.
So part of what's taking place in this trust economy is that people are moving more towards more trusted sources of information because there's plenty of information out there. The
Oh,
question is,
yeah.
what can you trust?
Hmm.
And the experience of other people who you know,
Hmm.
or maybe who you don't, is going to become an increasingly influential factor
Hmm.
as traditional marketing becomes less and less effective.
Hmm.
It's going to be moving into this trust factor.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why we're focused on client experience and client journey,
Hmm.
because if you can nail that right, everything else will fall in line.
Hmm.
And if you don't, if let's say you're a hospital that's focused primarily on revenue, and the way you want to accomplish revenue is by keeping your costs as low as possible. And as part of that, what you do is you staff as minimally as you can.
Hmm.
You gut anything that doesn't bring in a dollar in a clear sense, like training and education.
Hmm.
Well, guess what? The client experience at that hospital is not going to be great.
Yes.
And as people become more discerning of where their dollars are going, those dollars are going to start flowing towards the hospitals
Hmm.
that are able to deliver that exceptional experience. And they're also going to have a lot less churn and they'll have a much easier job getting new
Hmm.
clients in the door than the ones that are focused just on quote unquote the dollars.
Yeah. You know, something you said really resonated with me because I have been working with clients and I help my clients create their website and get the right stuff on the website
Yeah.
and do that. But you know, the new world is now AI. It's not
Yeah.
just a Google search, it's an AI response. And of course, all marketing people are like, you need to be in the AI response. And how do you get to the AI response? Well, a lot of that has to do with are your blog posts pertinent and
Mhm.
you know, are you being transparent about pricing? Because now the AI bot is capable of contacting your practice and asking a price without ever talking to a human. And that will come up higher in the AI search because of transparency,
Mhm.
where it can actually get pricing for you. And it asks you, would you like me to go and get a price for that?
Right.
This kind of freaked me out. So I know I threw this at you unexpectedly, but
That's
tell me
okay.
your thoughts about that. I mean, you know, when you said trust economy, I went, yeah, because I don't trust anything anymore as far as
Mhm.
marketing, advertising, Facebook post, anything that comes over. it looks like it's been either written by AI or manipulated by AI, and it could be completely false. So I feel like we're just the
Yes.
only truth we have out there is somebody else said it, right?
Yes, and so you are absolutely correct, and that is that feeling that you have that so much of the things that you see are manipulated become part of the basis that's driving us towards this trust economy.
Hmm.
Um, Now, most hospitals or some hospitals are familiar with something called Net Promoter Score,
Hmm.
which Net Promoter Score, for those who don't know it, you've seen the question, is how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or a family member on a
Hmm.
scale of 1 to 10? That divides up your client base into promoters, the ones that give you a 9 or a 10, passives, which are the sevens and eights, and detractors, which is the 0 through sixes. So it gives you a single number. The way it's calculated is like a company like Apple might have a net promoter score of like 89, which
Hmm.
is pretty high.
Hmm.
Whereas a cable company or your cell phone provider, they might have an average score of like 40 or something because just
Hmm.
most people aren't that happy with their service.
Yes.
So that was the first version of Net Promoter Score, but the people who came up with that have a new version called Net Promoter Score 3.0. And in that instance, what they do now is they're looking at the source of customer. So just like you did back in the days in the yellow pages, and they divide up the source of that customer or growth into either organic based
Hmm.
or acquisition based. So acquisition based is, did you spend money to try to get this customer in the door or to get this degree of growth? Or was this organic, meaning it's a referral, it's a recommendation, it's word of mouth, it's retention, it's reduction of churn. These all fall within the organic category of growth. And the study that the folks from Net Promoter Score did is they did an analysis of a bank that had a very, very high Net Promoter Score. And in their loan department, they were growing at like 15 to 16% per year. And it was through referrals and repeat customers, where the industry average was about 2% growth. So they had, 7 times, 8 times more money coming in simply because their source of new clients, their source of new loans was coming from doing an amazing job on the ones that they did. And the same thing can apply in veterinary medicine. I mean, as you said, your hospital was unshakable, your client base was unshakable. Even if somebody charged less, they're willing to pay more to have the quality of the relationship and know that the people who they're dealing with care for them and care for their pets. And so the only way, though, that you can really get there is by consistently measuring. Again, I'm a big person on measurement as well because we've got tons of data. And so our system, the way we analyze it, as I said, we break it down into like 17 individual steps within that client journey, measuring each individual thing. Then if we find there is, maybe a hot spot. So just as an example, a very common one is communication of wait time for ERs. So you'll see lots of complaints about wait time, but the reality is it's not really about wait time. It's the fact that nobody is updating them. Or in another instance that we worked with an emergency hospital, and they had a net promoter score of a 36, which on a scale of 1 to 100, even for an emergency hospital, a 36 is pretty bad.
That's
Like
sad. That's
that's
pretty
really bad.
sad.
And so when we looked at the data, it seemed to relate to the cost. And the owner, the veterinarian owner, is like, too bad. If they want to complain about the price, I'm going to charge even more to get them out of here. I don't want them in my practice. But we looked at what people are saying, and really it was not about what he was charging. It was the fact that his staff were never trained on how to have conversations about money. They were not comfortable with it, so they avoided it. And because they avoided it, people were shocked and surprised because nobody communicated with them. So we did a training program with them to help set expectations, to help explain and train the staff how you communicate about costs. How do you give people options and make them understand which options are going to likely be best so that you can get the highest level of adoption? Bottom line is, after we completed that training, it took about 6 weeks. We started remeasuring Net Promoter Score, and he was now up at a 78, which for an emergency hospital, granted, you're not going to get into the 80s or 90s because you do ER, but that means that twice as many people would come back to him. Twice as many people would recommend that hospital. And the only difference was in helping train the staff to have the difficult conversations that the owner is like, well, I can do it. So anyone in my hospital can do it. He has 150 employees. Well, no, just because you know how to do it, you're not conveying that very well to them because they don't have that skill set. And this is why it's so important for hospitals to invest in training. Not, obviously the front desk, they're the first and the last face that you see. Also, but technicians and even helping the veterinarians themselves understand how to communicate in an effective, efficient fashion that doesn't leave people more confused than they were at the beginning.
This is, I mean, we're thinking now, revenue coming in, clients retention and stuff. But one of the points that I don't think practice owners think about is one day they want to sell their hospital.
Yes.
And what you're selling is your client base and
Hmm.
the staff and the communication, and the community, the culture of your hospital, your reputation in the community. And so when your net promoter score is high and your retention of clients is high and you're not constantly churning, then that is valuable to a buyer. It
Yes.
actually has monetary value. And so investing in these kind of things is a smart strategy as a business owner for even if you wanted to sell 5 years from now.
Hmm.
You're building up a reputation that is so strong that everybody's fighting over you. I tell my clients, I said, look, you want to be the hospital where everybody wants to work, the hospital where everybody wants to come, and the hospital that everybody wants to buy.
Yep.
And this is how you do that. So, I'm really so interested in all the data that you have available and utilizing that information to kind of share a message like this is important. You must be doing this, especially in today's. I mean, you're right. We should have always been doing it.
Yes.
Me
But now
personally,
it's going to become mission critical.
yeah, absolutely. It has gone beyond that. It's a nice thing, but it's really how do you differentiate yourself in a market? Because there is a lot of competition. And, when I was managing my hospital, I managed it for almost 20 years. There were five AHA accredited hospitals within a 1.5 mile radius of each
Hmm.
other. And people look at me, go, oh my God, how did you compete with that? And I went, well,
Yeah.
first of all, we didn't think about competing with other people. We just worked on us and
Yes.
being everything that we could be. I didn't look at what other people were doing. The sales reps came in and we did ask, like, what cool things are other people doing? Because I'm
Hmm.
not above stealing a great idea. But we also sent our staff out and said, okay, what are you seeing out there in the world that you really like that other people are doing, that the barista at Starbucks has offered
Yeah.
you, or, that the experience that you got at the hotel recently, what can we take from that? And we don't have to have tunnel vision and do vet only stuff. We can go outside of that
Yes.
and learn and do some things. And then, community service, I think, is a big plus to show that you're caring about other people other than just driving revenue and coming out and doing community service. So, our time is just about up, Michael. Anything else that you can think of that we have not touched base on that, think is important for people to know?
Yeah, so what I would recommend, I'm just going to kind of go through a quick kind of checklist. If somebody is trying to listens to this podcast and is asking, okay, what do I, where should I start? So a few things, and you can use a platform like ours that does all this stuff automatically, or you can build something internally. But one of the things you want to start doing is tracking how every new client, how did they hear about you? What brought them in? And you want to follow up with every client that had a relevant visit to see how it went. And you want to break that down into each one of those steps or have a way to analyze that data so it doesn't just become this big blob of information that you don't know what to do with. They should also be monitoring and responding to reviews on a daily basis. And part of that is rewarding staff members who provide an exceptional experience and hold them up as a standard, like make them feel appreciated, but also show the other team members like what they can do to kind of be at that same level. If you do get client issues or concerns, respond to them promptly. and be willing to accept responsibility for mistakes. We had one client that we were, providing services for, and the woman in her survey said, I'm never coming back to you guys. You gave me one price over the phone, and then you charged me three times that when I checked out. And I didn't make a big deal about it, but it's bait and switch, and you're terrible people. The manager saw that, checked, turns out, you know what? We messed up. We applied the wrong billing code, and they reached out, they refunded her the money. She became a five-star glowing, like this is the best practice. They're so honest. Like they really, really will take responsibility, and they'll do what needs to be done.
Mhm.
So they turned this person who said, I'm never coming back, to being a raving fan. Now, I think the most challenging part that hospitals will have to do is being willing to make operational changes based on client feedback, consistent client feedback. So part of how our system operates is that we're getting huge amounts of data, but we're teasing out of that data what are the topics that are rising to the top, and then we will be pushing the appropriate training to that problem directly over to that hospital so that we're giving them not only here's the problem, but here's also the solution. And then we're measuring that after the training is completed to see that that issue or bottleneck has been resolved. And if it doesn't, we identify why. But the key thing for hospitals to do, and this is the part that I think is relatively disruptive, is being willing to make operational changes based on client feedback and stop writing that off as that's just how that person is. That person's just cranky. That person is this, that person is that. Sometimes, but sometimes it's also internal issues as well. So invest in training your staff, give them the skills that they need to deliver a five-star experience every single time. Your staff are the most important resource that you have. And think creatively about how to make a visit exceptional. It doesn't have to be super expensive, like with your readers. If you see that, like that is something that is memorable. And the last piece that I'll just mention is you need to be able to embrace a culture of continuous improvement. It's not like, oh, I fixed this one thing and now I am done. Now everybody's perfect because your staff is going to change, your clients are going to change. Hospitals need to continuously embrace the idea that they can be just a little bit better tomorrow than they were today.
And that is a challenge. When you're talking about these things, what I tend to tell people is what we're looking for is trends. There's always the one off. There's the client who came in. I remember this client so well. She
Yeah.
came in fussing about something, but the real thing she was mad at was her mechanic had overcharged her $700 on getting a car repaired, and then we came in and charged her $20 to examine
Yeah.
her dog, and she was upset about that. So it wasn't really anything that we had done. It happened, life happened before she got to us. But we can't discount all things that people complain about as it's not us, it's them. Because when we start to see trends, and I think that's what
Yes.
you're looking for here, is there's a trend that every time there's a bottleneck at a certain time of day and we can't get the phones answered and people fuss at 3 o'clock, there's always a problem. What's
Hmm.
happening at 3 o'clock? I tell this story. I went into a practice and it had a new practice owner, and she said, Debbie, we just don't understand what's going on here every day at 4 o'clock. This place is a madhouse. We can't take care of our clients. We just can't check everybody out in time, and they're all just piling in here. And she said, will you come and observe and see what's going on? So this
Yep.
practice had been around more than 30 years, and the two people who worked the front desk had been there the whole time. So they were the long-term people.
Yes.
And I've come to find out every surgery that was coming in that in the morning was being told to come at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to
Hmm.
pick up their animal. And they were doing 15 to 20 a day. So 15 or 20 people were piling into the lobby at 4 o'clock because they'd been told to pick
Yes.
up their pet on top of the appointments they already were taking. And the whole place was a zoo and it was overwhelmed. So a simple question like, well, could you not tell this one to come at 3 and this one 3:15 and this one 3:30? And then went, oh, we've always done it this way at 4 o'clock.
That,
I guess we could do that. And the next day it was smooth as silk. So sometimes there are very simple solutions by just looking at things that you have always done and you're
hmm.
doing them in autoplay. And
Right.
they're not serving you anymore because when that was a one doctor practice 30 years ago, that was fine.
Exactly.
It's just
As
not fine
hospitals
now.
change and evolve, which they all will over time,
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of, well, we always did it this way, and it's something that's so basic. And as somebody that says the on the outside, like we are,
Uh,
I can look at these things and I see these problems crystal clear. Like
yeah.
it is 100% clear what is going on here. But the people that are involved, that are in that mix, they don't see it at all.
No, no,
So
they can't. They're too busy. They're in the weeds. Too busy
yeah,
in the
so
weeds. Yeah.
part of the our challenge, or part of how we're building out this platform, is to bring out these elements and be able to put them in a frame so that the hospital and leadership can see, okay, yes, this is a consistent problem. And yes, here's the reasons why these things are happening. And yes, Revutry is giving us the steps we need to fix it. And yes, we can implement this. And then we can even track to see, did that solve the problem?
Hmm.
So we really are looking at this like we started in this space in just helping people get lots of great reviews. And that is certainly helpful. However, there's more value in creating, operational insights that are actionable and then making it easy for the hospital to implement those improvements. That is where foundationally you make that client journey better and you're making that hospital and the relationship with those clients stronger than it ever was. And that ultimately should be the goal that hospitals have. And again, whether they use a system like Revutry or something else internally, whatever it might be, the goal is to consistently look for how can we do better? How can we make improvements? Where is an area that I can make one thing a little bit better tomorrow than what we did today?
Yes, absolutely. Well, Michael, this has been, I feel like I'm waving a banner of customer service here. And that you're in my parade. So thank you for being in my parade because this is something I am so adamant about, and I really appreciate you joining us today on the bend. And I hope that my audience understands the value of customer journey and really focusing on this with the team. And we're so focused on medicine, which we should be providing excellent medicine, but you
Yes.
can't provide excellent medicine if nobody walks in your door. And that is the key to the kingdom is you've got to keep people coming in, you got to keep people coming back, and you've got to communicate with them in a way that they understand that they got value for what
Yes.
you did. And that
That
is
that
so
is
important.
100% correct. And as we both know, it's not the biggest lift in the world to do some of these things. It really isn't a huge change that you have to implement. You're not ripping everything up from the roots. What you're doing is simply learning from the insights that are available to you, providing your team again with the training and the support that they need to deliver that type of experience. And also, I think just for leadership, being open to the fact that, maybe just because we've always done something this way, there could doesn't mean that there couldn't be a better way that we could implement if we're at least open to it.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly. All
thank you
right.
so much for having me. I'm glad we had a chance to chat, and I really hope your audience got something valuable from our time today.
Okay. Well, I certainly did, and I'm really looking forward to seeing some insights and sharing some of those later out, maybe with some um, post or some blog post
Yeah,
so to talk about this a little bit more. So thank
absolutely. The,
you.
the
Thank
last,
you.
just one last note I'll leave you with
Yeah.
that I did do that I thought was an interesting study, for a hospitals. We do track the source of customers, like how did you become a client?
Hmm.
And one of the options, obviously, is I read your online reviews. So just to give hospitals a context, we see on average that a hospital can generate about $500,000 a year if they have a very good presence online and that their clients are continually recommending and endorsing them to others. So this is it's a clear line of sight. Like you were here, and then your reviews went here, and the number of people that came in, their lifetime value, I think it added up to $482,000. So this is a revenue opportunity to when you make things better and make your clients happier, you will earn more money at that hospital. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, you are exactly right. And life gets better inside the hospital when people like you.
Yes, that is very much true. So,
That
Debbie,
that
thank
makes
you
working
again.
better.
Yes, thank you again. And I look forward to chatting again at some point. And I'll
Yeah.
share some of the results and data for you, data points that we've got.
Okay, that's excellent. And we will share Michael's information and his contact information will all be in the show notes that will be attached to the bend this episode when it launches. So thank you again to the audience for joining us. We hope that you got a new idea, even if you shined up an old idea that makes your customer service better. We appreciate it. And if you, I'd love to hear from you if you are a person who is uh, improving the profession and have you as a guest on the bin. So just reach out to me through my LinkedIn profile or my Instagram profile. Thank you very much again, Michael, and thank you everyone for listening to us today on the bin.